Hello, everyone. This is Suzanne at The Gospel Truth. Welcome back. Welcome back to me, too, right? I know I've been missing in action for a couple days. It's been very busy. We've been training our dog, Sam. He's coming along really great. But Sam, as you know, has been having trouble with his bowels. Sam is our dog. He's been having trouble with it being loose. So we did take him to a vet yesterday. We established that to get established at this vet's office, that's where Sam will go in the future for all his treatments and care. And guess what? We were talking to this doctor, and we talked about how much we love Dr. Poe, and he says, I used to work for him. He says, I knew Charles when he was an itty-bitty boy. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Poe, the incredible Dr. Poe, but he's an animal veterinarian. I forgot where he's located, but it's about 3 hours from us. And big television show, very popular. And he worked for him. And I said, oh, you work for Dr. Poe? This is fantastic. Then we're going to keep you. And we had a good laugh about that. And basically what he's doing, he's on a chicken and rice diet. And he takes Pepcid for his tummy. So we're still working on getting that issue cleared up. We got a lot of good information from this doctor. He was very thorough. We loved him to pieces. And he only charged us $60. $60 to examine him and tell us what he thought, future needs, all that stuff. We were blown away. And I've got a lot of paperwork to send in. I got 2 claims to send into my insurance, and I got to go to the printers and copy all that, and you know how that goes. But it's good that we took out the pet insurance because, like I said, 80% back is huge. So we've been very busy taking care of Sam and making sure we get our walks in daily. And, Ron's headaches are back, as you know, and we're trying to get that under control. So, yeah, there's been a lot of things going on, but we're getting back on track, which is always good. So today, we're going to get back to our lesson. Keep the faith, how to stand strong in a world turned upside down. Today in our book, we are now in chapter 2. We're going to talk about destroy your encouragement, losing heart. And we'll do building blocks. All right, let's get started right away. Destroy your discouragement. It was clear to Dorothea that her husband drank too much. But what could she do about it? Whenever she confronted him about his problem, he flew into a rage, which only made the drinking worse. Since there didn't seem to be any viable options, Dorothea simply tried to ignore the problem and concentrate on raising their son. She focused everything on motherhood. Soon, that wouldn't be an option either. One autumn evening in 1995, Dorothea's husband was foolishly handling his gun while he was under the influence of alcohol. His hand slipped, the gun went off, and a bullet took the life of their son. How incredibly sad. With her husband in jail, Dorothea was left to the silence and despair of an empty house. She no longer had any real desire to live, but she was also afraid to die. A lifetime ago, at age 13, she had joined a church, but issues of life and death and eternity were all equal mysteries to her now. Dorothea remembers climbing into her car late one night and driving for hours in the hope that maybe she'd drift off to sleep and quickly be delivered from her waking nightmare. But something protected her every time. In the daylight, she began visiting churches. It was good medicine at the time, but the effects wore off when she left the sanctuary and re-entered the roaring silence of her home. What exactly are the limits to human tolerance? What are the units of measurement for pain and discouragement? And how does your discouragement threshold differ from mine? These are all good questions, tough questions. I'm not sure about the answer to those questions, but the human spirit can be an amazing thing. Take the case of Lawrence Hanratty, who was named the unluckiest man in New York City. This poor fellow profiled in the Los Angeles Times. He was nearly electrocuted to death in a construction site accident in 1984. 4 weeks he laid in a coma, with his lawyer fighting for his disability claim, until one of them was disbarred and 2 of them died. Hanratty's wife then ran off with her lawyer. Hanratty later lost his car in a terrible crash. After the police had left the scene of the accident, criminals came along and robbed him. Then an insurance company fought to cut off his workers' compensation benefits, and his landlord tried to evict him. He suffered from depression and agoraphobia. He required a canister of oxygen for breathing and took 42 pills per day for his heart and liver ailments. Talk about feeling like the world turned upside down. Wow. Still, all was not lost. A city councilman took up his cause. Neighbors began to rally around him. Incredibly, Lawrence Hanratty summed up his life this way: there's always hope. There's always hope. This man's life was a disaster in the eyes of the world, but not in the eyes of God. And he said there's always hope. Isn't that true? Even amidst our pain, agony, our suffering, our anxieties, all those things, there's always hope. And we must never forget that. There's always, always hope. Don't you give up. Losing heart. Would you be able to talk about hope after a string of unthinkable calamities? Have you accentuated the positive and eliminated the negative during the low points of your life? Yesterday, when I was at physical therapy, I walked in, I signed in, and Gail, the receptionist, she's a sweetheart, she says, "How you doing today, Suzanne?" And I said, "I'm here. I'm good." And on the way out, I was, a little sore from the treatments and stuff. And we got talking again, and I said, when you decide to change your attitude, marvelous things happen. You can either dwell on the negative or dwell on the hope. Dwell on the positive. We know these words are true. There's always hope, but sometimes it's hard to believe them. All of us suffer through bouts of discouragement. The dictionary defines discourage as to deprive of courage, to deter, to dishearten, to hinder. All these D words, and you can throw in doom, depression, defeat, despair. The mind dwells on them when life has us pinned down. The New Testament uses 3 Greek words to carry the idea of being disheartened, dispirited, or discouraged. We often translate them as to faint or to lose heart. For example, Paul warned us to take special care not to become the source of discouragement for our children. Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. And in 2 Corinthians 4:1, he spoke to those who may become disheartened in ministry. Therefore, since we have this ministry, as we have received mercy, we do not lose heart. Later in that chapter, he encourages us not to become discouraged as the outward man deteriorates, because what's inside us is being renewed daily. How do you renew your faith daily? How do you renew yourself daily? That's a question to think about. And we shouldn't be discouraged by the plight of our loved ones. For in Ephesians 3, Paul wrote, "Do not lose heart at my tribulations for you." Jesus brought up the subject of discouragement in the context of prayer. He spoke a parable to them. Luke 18:1 tells us that men always ought to pray and not lose heart. There's so much truth in that verse. We must live and breathe and take up residence in prayer, or we're sure to faint, to grow weary, to lose heart. It takes diligent faith to live above discouragement. Lest you think this is purely a personal issue, remember that entire nations can run out of hope. It happened during the darkest days of Israel and Judah, when the invaders rolled in. The Babylonians destroyed the holy city of Jerusalem, looting its glories and carrying away its people to enslavement in a distant land. It seemed that God's chosen people had lost it all, their land, their pride, their very identity as a nation set apart for a special destiny. For now, God's children were dispersed across the nations. These were the darkest times, days of lamentation, weeping, and silence. But as Lawrence Hanratty said, there's always hope. A ruler named Cyrus the Persian came to power, and he gave permission for Jewish exiles to begin the homeward journey. In the time of the first return and rebuilding of the temple, we think of two biblical heroes, a priest named Ezra and an administrator named Nehemiah. Each has a book of his own in our Bible, but there was a time when their two accounts were combined in one long book. Ezra was a priest to broken hearts, and Nehemiah was a rebuilder of broken dreams. The second one offers a liberating lesson for us about the renovation of hope from the rubble of discouragement. I like that. The second one offers a liberating lesson for us about the renovation of hope and from the rubble of discouragement. Let's explore that story in greater details as a powerful example of what it means to stand strong even in the face of discouragement. Building blocks. The fourth chapter of Nehemiah's book puts us in the middle of exciting times. Nehemiah, the gifted organizer, has arrived in a chaotic situation, but he has galvanized the community and jump-started the rebuilding operation. With the walls lying in ruins, the people of Israel haven't had the luxury of peaceful sleep. Raiders from the outlying provinces have been able to attack by night and keep the Israelite settlers discouraged and fearful. This has been done very deliberately. The threat of a Hebrew revival is an unwelcomed one to the neighbors. All this talk of rebuilding must be snuffed out. We're trying to snuff out Christians today, aren't they? All the wokeness and all the horrible things that are going on in the world. And they're going after Christians. They want to snuff us out. But that will never happen. Therefore, the Israelites have been under constant attack from every side. Sanballat and the Sumerians from the north, Tobiah and the Ammonites from the east, Geshem and the Arabs from the south, and the Ashdods from the west. Nehemiah 4:8 tells us they formed a kind of dark alliance to bring pressure on the construction workers. And the greatest weapon in their arsenal are fear and discouragement. That's true, fear and discouragement, the greatest weapons. But God has different ideas. He has empowered his visionary servant Nehemiah in a mighty way. Day by day, the work goes on. Brick by brick, the walls are rising again. Here in the fourth chapter of Nehemiah, we join the story. The work is halfway complete. The people can smell victory. And yet, the wisdom of experience tells us that the midpoint is a precarious place to be. A bit less than half, or a bit more than half, isn't so bad, but it's dangerous to be exactly in the middle. Johnny Mercer's old song, Accentuate the Positive, says, don't mess with Mr. In-Between. That's actually rather profound. The Bible tells us that right in between, at the halfway point, a fresh wave of discouragement broke out through rumors of marauders and mayhem. Nehemiah realized that he must deal with the lagging spirits of his people. I think you'll recognize that the principles he used haven't changed. Nehemiah had to deal with discouragement in the same ways we do. As we review these principles, you're likely to say, oh yes, I've been there, I've done that. And tomorrow, we will be discovering how Nehemiah handled the problem. We will be talking about recognizing discouragement, and we will cover these points. Factor 1, fatigue. Factor 2, frustration. Factor 3, failure. Factor 4, fear. And then we're going to learn how to respond to all those. Isn't that going to be exciting? I hope you're growing as I am growing in the Word and in my faith. This has been an absolutely great study, especially the days that we're living in. And when I was growing up in the 50s, the world seemed like a pretty nice place. As far as, neighbors, watch out for neighbors, watch out for each other's kids. Churches were strong. And we didn't have all this woke nonsense and all this technology going on. That a lot of technology is good, but a lot of it's been very bad. Very, very bad. And it's sad now as an adult that I, as well as some of you are my age, I'm sure, we've seen a lot of changes, and not for the good. And we know we can look to the Bible and say, yeah, this is what was going to happen, and it's happening right before our eyes. We must never forget that, but we also must never forget that God is in control of it all. God was in control when the assassination attempt was taken on Trump. God allows things to happen and allows things not to happen. And only God knows the reasons behind that. Some things are a great mystery in the ways that God works. Other things are quite plain to see. And as you grow in your faith and you keep gaining wisdom and knowledge, you see things in a whole different way. When you really start reading the scriptures and applying them to your life, and each time you read the scriptures, I guarantee you'll find something different that inspires you, that was there right along, and it's like, how did I miss that? My goodness. Isn't that great? It's a living water. Not dead water. You don't drink of it once and, okay, well, that's it. I can put this one aside. I read this book. It's a never-ending well. And we must always, always tap into it. When you're feeling discouraged, fatigued, tired, when you just had it all, just, I'm done. When those I'm done comes, if you're done, maybe it's time for a change. Maybe it's a time for a change in attitude, lifestyle, maybe letting go of some things, possessions that you have that are just dust collectors. Each one of us is different in how we view things. But I think when it comes to being a Christian, we have to view things through Jesus' eyes. And one way to do that is to go to the scriptures and read them daily. All right, everyone, you take care. You have a blessed day in the Lord. Ron and I have an appointment today at 2 o'clock. A while back, he lost his right hearing aid, and we had to order another one. It came in, so we're going to get him back hearing 100%, or as close to that as we can. And Sam loves to go on car rides, so he will be going with us. And life is good. Life is good in spite of everything. Don't you forget that. Take care now. Bye-bye.